Welcome back to the show, everyone. This week we're going to continue on building my 125cc electric start Honda 3-wheeler conversion bike. Over the last handful of videos, we got everything into this state, and this week we're going to work on fabbing up some fenders and side panels. I picked up a couple of early 1980s Honda 3-wheeler fenders to use on the bike, but unfortunately, one of the fenders had a huge crack in it. But no worries, dude. We'll get that thing plastic welded right up. Now let's move on to the top side of the fender. I start out by running the sharp edge of the iron into the crack to create a little valley, and then take my little welding rods and melt them into the valley and smooth everything out as best as I can before moving on to sanding. I start out by sanding down the top side of the weld with some 200 grit sandpaper until everything is all smoothed out. And once I have the rest of the crack welded up and sanded with 200 grit, I'm going to finish up by sanding everything with 400 grit sandpaper, and the fender will be ready for priming and paint. Yeah, that's going to hold up nice, and you're not going to see a darn thing after a couple of coats of primer. Now we're going to take another front fender off of a 1981 Honda ATC, flip it around backwards, chop it up, and this is going to become the rear fender. It's kind of fun editing these old videos and seeing what the fenders look like originally compared to the finished product. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We got a long ways to go before we get to this point. There, now let's figure out how we're going to mount these bad boys onto the bike. I took a rear grab bar off of an old ATC 93-wheeler and chopped the bottom mounts off of it, and I'm going to bolt it to the back of the frame. Now that should hold the top of the fender in place, and you're not going to see a darn thing once the seat is covering the nuts and the washers. And I'm just using some simple self-tapping screws to mount the front of the fender, and all this ugliness is going to be hidden by the side panels. And now that the rear fender is done, we got to figure out a way to mount the front fender to the ATC 200S fork. now I'm tapping those holes for some 6mm bolts, and I think this is going to work pretty good. I should be able to bolt the bracket to the stock fender mounting holes, and then I can drill a couple holes in the fender and then mount the fender to the bracket using the holes I just tapped. Let's see how it turns out. Not quite. The fender line doesn't follow the tire all that well with that flat bracket. But no worries, nothing a little bending on the vise can't fix. Yeah, much better. Now let's get this sucker bolted on and move on to building the side panels.
Oh, dude, look, it's Sasquatch. Oh, no, it's John Lennon.
Okay, now on to the fun part. Since there's no side panels out there that we can easily modify to fit on the bike, we gotta build them from scratch out of fiberglass. There, all done. And she's beautiful. See you next week. Just kidding. Yeah, we're definitely getting close. Now let's take a walk around the bike and see how things look from a bunch of different angles. Yeah, there's still some fine tuning to go, but let's move on to the right side of the bike and we can tweak things here and there once both sides are on. Things are looking pretty symmetrical and they line up with the seat really nice. Let's move on to laying down some 100% silicone caulk on top of the foam. Now the reason I'm doing this is that the silicone will act as a release agent for the fiberglass resin. So once this is set up, I can lay down my fiberglass and it's going to pop right out of the mold once it's all set up. I'm sure that somebody makes something specifically for this, but the silicone was just another great idea that Dad had, and plus, it only costs a few bucks to do. Now on to the itchy and smelly part of cutting up some fiberglass mat and mixing up some polyester resin. Now I really don't like doing this part, but hey, it's really worth it if you can build your own custom body panels. I want to tell you, this has been a blast this week building our own custom body panels for the bike. Now in the next few weeks, we're going to get rocking on the bodywork and make the bike shiny and blue before you know it. So in the meantime, if you need something to tide you over until next week, you can click the video on the left if you want to check out last week's video, or you can click the video on the right if you want to check out another one of my awesome builds. See you next week.